Welcome to part 5 of getting started with web video. We won't keep you in the dark much longer, we promise. And in the dark, first of all, is Mark Johnson to my left.
And Mr. Dave Thackeray. Now, we're going to be talking about lighting. I suppose you guessed that. Now, we're just sitting here really in sort of, the room. It's a darkened room, exactly. But in the standard room lighting. But just so you can see us, we are just going to turn on one of the main studio lights just to give us some... There we go. Thank you for. Oh,
and then there was light.
And then there was light. And this isn't great lighting. So we've turned off the room lights as well, and you can see there's a shadow from something, etc. But we're going to be talking about all sorts of exciting things.
Got a lot to cram in, so we better get started, haven't we? Now, lighting to me seems very, very complicated. I know you can simplify it, so I want you to reassure me that we don't need the brightest minds to make us shine. Give us some basics so that we can make our video really pump out some great content using very simple lighting.
Well, I think the main thing is you need to experiment. A lot of people think that you need lots and lots of light, but actually you need a balance between some bright light and some not so bright light, so you get shadows and things. And we'll do a little sort of show and tell in a minute that demonstrates that. The standard lighting that most photographers will have heard of is 3-point lighting, where you use 3 points. Now, 3 different lights. Some people just say no, you don't have to do that. And you can get great effects with 1 light or 2 lights or 10 lights or 20 lights, whatever we have in the studio here. But your mileage varies. You have to see, depends on the room you're in. I mean, ideally, I think there are some basic tips. Start off if you can in a darkened room. Don't go somewhere where there's lots of natural light. While natural light can be great, the problem with it is it varies. It depends on the time of day. Depends if there's a cloud goes over. So if you've got a nice bright light and you're using it and you're about to shoot your video and a cloud goes over, the lighting levels all change. So that's the first tip. It doesn't have to be dark, just a darkened room. Think about where you are as well. I mean, the backgrounds. If you've got a big white background, we have the wall behind us here is white, and that's actually pretty boring. In many ways it's good because light reflects off it. But what we do to break it up, even though we have a monitor behind us just connected to a PC, is we put some coloured LED lighting on it, and we tend and we tend to use different colours. And these lights are just DJ lights. They're meant for DJs, flashing and relatively cheap. But you don't need that, but just be aware of your background. When you're shooting a video, you want to make sure that there is either a neutral but interesting background. It's also good to have a contrasting background behind. So for close-up shots, normally it's good to have a darker background than it is to have a lighter background. But back to the lighting. 3-point
lighting then fundamentally means having 2 lights at the front at various angles and having a light above the talent, and I say that loosely with me as being the talent, above the talent to shine down and create depth that separates the talent from the background. Yeah.
It's normally these lights are known as the key light, the fill light, and the backlight, or the hair light, some people call it. And it's normally that third light that people forget about. But I hope we'll be able to demonstrate how useful it is to have that third light. Sometimes you don't need it. If you have a white wall and you have some lights on, sometimes you'll get enough reflection off the wall. But having white behind you, as I said, isn't if you're fair-skinned, against white, it just...
The only thing flat we want in the video is the screen. Everything else needs to be bright and vibrant and standing out. Otherwise, you might as well just resort to audio. These lighting basics will stand you in great stead.
And you can try and use what you've got. I think that the one important thing is, and I don't want to get into the technical bits of it, but you must use the same sort of light bulbs in all of them. Lights actually have different sort of colours, the different colour of light that comes out of them. And if you use the same bulbs in all your lights, then it is much easier to get a good shot. If you are mixing them different types, then it becomes a problem. What we use are compact fluorescent bulbs. I have one here. It's actually quite a large. This is 105 watt compact fluorescent, and it is known as a daylight bulb. So it is meant to be sort of natural daylight. I've used the smaller versions of these, and I have bought IKEA lamps, cheap lamps, you know, when they're on sale, 15 or 20 pounds. Plug these in and actually use those quite effectively.
They will fit into a standard lamp.
Yeah, it's just a standard screw fitting, and you can buy them. I mean, these I think were only about £30 for a big one. The smaller, so you know, £5 or £10 each. But if you get a few of those, you know, with standard lamps, sometimes you have to get them a bit closer than you might like, but as long as they're out of shot and they work. So it can start cheaply, but it's not too expensive to go up to the next stage.
It sounds like an investment in itself of the bulb, but that will last you 10,000 hours?
Yeah, I think they're 10, yeah.
So you will get almost a lifetime video.
I think we've had one go, and we must have, you know, 30 or 40 different types of bulbs. And in a couple of years. So.
You've told us, now this is lighting, so we would love to see a bit of a run around the studio, this fantastic studio. You've got a grid here. Clearly we're not going to talk about that today. This is a very professional studio. But I would really appreciate it if you could give us a bit of a walk around about the lighting basics, so we can actually see and get a feel for what it takes to create that essential lighting experience for your very first video. So
what we're going to use, if we go to the wider shot, you can see that we've got a couple of lamps here. These are sort of standard, photography studio lights. They actually have 3 of the smaller compact fluorescent bulbs in. I can't remember how much these were, £100, a couple of £100. They weren't a lot of money. And if you look on eBay or even on Amazon, you can get lighting kits, you know, pretty reasonably priced. So if you want to invest a little bit in your lighting, you know, start off with one of those kits. The thing to know about these is that they have, if I turn this one around, you can see that it actually has some cloth over the front, and that's known as a diffuser. And what that does is sort of breaks up all the light, so it comes out takes the harshness out of it. And then up here you can see that we have this. That's an IKEA light that's just hanging down with one of those compact fluorescent bulbs in. So I'm just going to use these 2 lights and that light and just show people the type of things to think about. In this 5 minutes, we cannot teach lighting, but what we can do is let people know what some of the basic rules are, and then you have to go and practice and play.
That's the fun bit.
All right, so let's get underway. We'll turn off the main studio light. And so Dave is in the dark.
I'm back in face for radio mode now, Mark.
Now I'm just going to turn on this light over here, and if we then, I'm just going to leave that there. And it's quite a shadow on it. So if we switch to the camera that's pointing directly at Dave, you can see that's sort of a very high contrast picture. I mean, it's not, you know, you wouldn't want to use that. It looks a bit sinister, really. You've got sort of half of your face is dark, and so the good thing is you have some shadow. You do need shadow on one side of the face. Whereas if I bring that same light, we'll go to the wide shot again. If I bring that same light sort of almost straight into the front, and then we go to the close-up picture. Oh, I've got it in the shot. I take it just out of the shot. You can see, I mean, again, that isn't a particularly, you know, bad, but there's no definition. Your hair sort of merges in to the bookcase behind you. It's got no depth. It's quite flat, but you know, not a bad picture. So I would say you could use that. Even just a single light could be used. However, if I go back to the wide shot so people can see what I mean. I'm going to move this light back over to here, and then come over and switch this light on, and we'll just play around. So if I bring this light up to here, and then we switch to your face. Now, again, quite well lit, but there is no real shadow. A little bit of shadow on the left side of your face, but if I bring this back, I'm just moving it back, there comes a point where you seem to get some definition between the left and right hand side of your face. You get a little bit more shadow. Perhaps if I exaggerate it, bring it all the way back, people will see what I mean. And if I move closer, so there comes a point, you just play with that point. I think that is about the right place. Some people might disagree,
well,
but
Mark, you make me
that
look
looks
beautiful.
good. No, nobody could do that, Dave. So there we go. So I've got 2 lights on, and you know, it is. Yeah, it's, again, you could use that. We've just been thinking about it, playing around. Now, if we go back to your picture, your head is still a little bit of definition. If you look at the top right of your head, and you see on the hair, you can see a little bit of a definition, and that is reflected light that's coming off the white wall, you know, above your left shoulder. What I'm going to do is go and turn on my really expensive IKEA light.
Time for the step ladder, Mark.
Yeah. And you should see that you immediately get some definition around the head, and
really,
you know,
finding it around here,
yeah,
just around the top. There's a sheen.
Yeah. Now that may be a bit close, but you play around with it. So what we're looking for here, is, you know, some shadow on one side of the face, and we want to try and give it some depth, almost a 3D effect, and you get that by making sure there is enough light on the back of the head. There's, you know, the backlight or the hair light that we talked about. So I'm just going to switch this around here. It won't be great, but I'll just come back and sit here.
Well, that was beautiful. I feel like I've been in a makeup studio now. All you need to do is put the foundation on, or we can.
Let me just move this light out of the way a little bit. It was just in the shot there.
I'm looking around the studio and I'm thinking those are floor standards, the 2 main lights, and the, as you called it, the hair light before, is on a clamp off your rig. But you can attach these, I presume, to things like, you know, you get a clamp, you can put them onto the walls or onto your bookshelves.
I mean, I have done everything. I've got some clamps that I used to use a studio. I showed you last night how we started off doing videos. A very small room, and we used to clamp onto bookcases, etc. I mean, this particular one, we have, you know, I suppose you could say we have cheated and we've got it clamped onto the grid. But equally, it could have been, you know, clamped onto the top of a bookcase, or you just screw something onto the wall and use that. So there are lots of ways you can with it. Just think about it a little bit. There's lots of ways you can, you know, find to position lights.
I think that's a really easy guide to getting started with lighting on our Getting Started with Web Video course, Mark. It's incredible. We've covered 3-point basics. We now kind of just need to sort of summarise things, and things like, you know, you might naturally want to deviate and use natural light, but depending on the time of day, you could have clouds, rain. It could totally change the scene, couldn't it?
I would start indoors and avoid natural light.
And don't mix your lighting types. Keep the same type of bulb, whatever lights you're using. Ideally stick with the 3-point.
We haven't talked about white balance. Most cameras will have this white balance control. Most of them will be on automatic, so you don't have to worry about that. But if the colours don't look right on your camera, then, you know, see if you can play around with the white balance control. But I don't want to get too much into that. But if we were under tungsten lighting or normal light bulbs, this would look very different unless we change the white balance on the camera.
And also, don't fight the shadows as well. Work with them. Understand that it gives depth, just as the hair light gives depth to you sitting against a background. It's a good opportunity. And also look at ways that you can enhance the background with backlighting as well, like you've done there, downlighting from the rig.
And the thing to do is, knowing those things, watch when you're watching a movie, when you're watching, you know, a program on TV. Look at how they're lighting people. On the news shows, it tends to be fairly bland lighting, but look at some of the other shows and just see how they're doing the lighting, and they are basically, you know, doing the same thing.
And go to YouTube and check out a video called Lighting an Egg, which will give you quite an illuminating experience on the art of lighting in just a few minutes. The next part, we're going to be talking about hitting that red button.
Doing all the things.
All about the production, the whys and nots. So that's going to be very exciting. But for now, that's audio and lighting in the bag over the past 2 parts. Should we get straight on?
I think we'll see you in the next part.